Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. Today, my guest went from teaching fashion, design, illustration, and graphics, and telling all her students to use their skills and experience for their careers and professions, and decided to take her own advice and create a business based on her love of travel and art and showing their beauty. Please welcome the founder and illustrator of Jelly Press, Chelsea Preston. What's going on, Chelsea?
Hi, Biggie. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm glad that you're with me as well today. I appreciate you taking some time to have lunch with me today. So obviously, before we start, I always like to ask the question, what is your go-to sandwich?
I was listening to some of your other episodes and I was stressed about this question. I was like, I gotta have a good one. I think a classic grilled cheese sandwich is my go-to.
Yeah, that's
with tomato.
Tomato inside?
Yes.
Slice thin or thick slice?
Thin.
Okay. You can't go
It
wrong
has
with
to
it.
be like a good Irish butter on the outside and definitely a cheddar cheese, but I like a trio of cheeses, like a melty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you ever do a little bit of like cream cheese and then add a bunch of other cheeses as well?
I did do the cream cheese because I know the grilled cheese at Disney at Hollywood Studios has the cream cheese. Is it on the outside?
I don't know if they do it on the outside. I've never tried actually doing it with the outside. I have done it on the inside of it because so it gets a little gooey along with the other ones. I usually will do that is when I do like a 5 cheese grilled cheese. That's one of my cheeses is the cream cheese. So I'm getting hungry now. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Jelly Press. So obviously I know you started it in April of 2017, and like I said in the intro, you followed your own advice. But I want you to be able to tell listeners a little bit, because obviously I kind of gave an inkling, but I want you to kind of give them a little bit of an idea of what it is and then how and why you started it.
So Jelly Press is paper goods. I kind of branch it now into more of a lifestyle oriented product line. And it really right now highlights traveling and exploring the state of Florida and all of the amazing aspects of Florida that are not Disney. So going to the Florida Springs, going to all the Florida state parks, going hiking, looking for alligators, picking for oranges. So highlighting all of those kind of traditional Florida things that I think have gotten lost, like post 1970 Disney invasion. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I love Disney, obviously. They're marketing geniuses. So that's kind of the gist of it. So I do like stickers and postcards and prints. And I've recently got into apparel as well. My background's in merchandising and fashion, so I kind of always have this love for apparel. And I knew that was something I always wanted to get into, but Jelly Press, the brand name, didn't really lend to that. So that's where I introduced the Society of Florida Explorers this year. So that's more for the apparel kind of fun projects that I get to do on the side. It's more of a general, broader title for what I'm doing. So that's kind of a sub brand that I created this year. So that's kind of the gist. I do mostly watercolor illustrations for the products, and I also do some digital illustrations using Adobe Illustrator for more of the graphic oriented products like t-shirts. Yeah. So that's kind of the gist of that. It got started because my master's is in fashion, my bachelor's is in fine art and graphic design, and I went up to New York and I did the whole fashion thing for a summer and I hated it. And then I ended up getting back together with my husband, who I met at Flagler College, which kind of is my Florida roots. Moved to Florida and I was like, what am I going to do with fashion? Taught at a school. I was a department chair at 26 for this fashion design program. It's a college. So that was stressful and intense. And then the school ended up closing. It was a for-profit. So there was a kind of conflict between the government and for-profit schools, which there's a lot of justifiable reasons. So I didn't know what I was going to do. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to start my own business. So I started doing it whenever I was teaching part-time. I went down to part-time and started Jelly Press. And that's when I was kind of whipping up some ideas and did like a side project for Magnolia Market, which is like Chip and Joanna Gaines, which is kind of where it all started, of the energy of like, I can do this. Like I just put out this design for them and they liked it. And it just kind of gave me that energy of like, I can really do this. This is something I have the skill for and talent. And that's kind of when I started Jelly Press. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to actually hit,
journey.
I'll hit on a few of them because obviously I know a little bit of the history. So this kind of is good. You hit a whole bunch and I'll kind of we'll take little bites of everything. So, cause obviously that was a lot of information. So the first part was the Magnolia part. So obviously I think what's impressive to me about that is, and how that all came about was when you did that project, at least from, you know, based on our previous conversations and everything like that, that was something that you actually did because you were a big fan of the brand and you saw that there was a need based on what the packaging is and based on your experience, you saw that, hey, you know, I believe that if the story, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, you know, is the fact that your mom received a gift from them. And when you saw the packaging was like just regular tissue paper. And you were kind of, based on your experience and knowledge, you were kind of like, wow, I'm really surprised based on everything else that they do, that they don't have something a little bit more, you know, like a, you know, maybe like a kind of like a custom tissue paper. And that kind of like almost like sparked your interest to kind of go. And then I'll kind of let you kind of go from there. You kind of just took it and went with it, right? And you basically started telling everybody and anyone who would listen from Magnolia about it.
That's pretty much exactly what happened. I think it was like a middle of the night idea that kind of popped in my head after I had that conversation with my mom about the experience that she had. And I was in the bathroom and I had this idea. All genius ideas happen in the bathroom, right?
Heck yeah.
So I was a day I wasn't teaching. So I was at home and I saw this idea, this vision, and I wanted them to have like a wrapping paper, a tissue paper. I did a couple different illustrations. It was going to be like a French toit, but with all of their little buildings for Magnolia Market. So the silos and the bakery and the garden shop and all the things that she had. And it was going to be, looked like kind of like a French toit. So I did it. I put together like a proposal. I put the design in like aprons and kitchen towels and wrapping paper and sent this proposal to every avenue that I could possibly find, be it Joanna's social media or Chip's social media, all the emails I could find. And I think it only took like a couple of days and I got an email back and they're like, hey, we sent this to the head buyer and she's interested. So then she reached out to me and and then got to one final round of edits with Joanna, which were just like a bunch of circles. And they ended up paying me for it. I don't know if they ever used it, but it was a really cool.
That's a win experience. Right there. That's a win.
Yeah,
and then
it was awesome.
And then the other thing that I was curious about, because I thought this is one of the things I thought was interesting. And I know you kind of, what happens is a lot of times when we live it, we don't tend to realize the amazingness of all these things. And the one thing that I've already kind of realized just from our small conversations and the times, you have a very great understanding and concept of being able to see something that is missing or lacking and being able to provide something. And the reason I say that is because based on, and that was the one first things I realized when I was reading, even like in your About You page, the fact that you lived in New Smyrna, it's an area that's full of art and there's a lot of, a kind of a lot of art and culture in that area. And the fact that you noticed that there was not, I guess we'll say, affordable, fun, quirky art that people would be able to enjoy based on the fact that it's such a tourist destination that people can just take home. And since you love traveling and that's something that you already do, you realize like, hey, they're not doing this in my backyard. And that, to me, I noticed that that's kind of what you kind of were like, I'm going to bring this to my own backyard. And I believe that's kind of how I'm seeing how I kind of Jelly Press kind of actually even kind of has started, I guess, the foundation, right? Its roots of its trees were there. Is kind of how you started it.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. And that's the biggest compliment I've ever received as an entrepreneur, of someone noticing that, because I don't even think I realized that, but that's cool. So we travel a lot and we go to like Scotland and England and Italy, and we're going to France. And every time we go, I try to find a piece of artwork that's like sub $50 that is either like a screen print or a digital print or something. that I can hang on my wall to remember that experience
Yeah.
by. And I typically try to find like stores that are highlighting local artists and they're younger and they're the movers and the shakers of the town, and they kind of really grasp the aesthetic of and the movement that's going on in that town at the time. So that's what my home is filled with art from artists from everywhere that we've traveled. And I came home, and that's when I was thinking, like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't have a job anymore, and I have a master's in fashion and fine art and graphic design. What am I going to do here? New Smyrna, it's tiny. So I realized we have a lot of art, but not a lot of affordable, approachable art that's like fun and
Yeah.
lively and represents like, the vibe of our town. So I did the first 4 prints, which were the Inlet, Flagler Avenue, Canal Street, and Wildlife, which kind of encompasses all of the main wildlife of New Smyrna Beach or Volusia County. And I did my first art show, and that's kind of it. And it was received really well. And then I did St. Augustine because I went to Flagler. And then I started working with Flagler College on some of the projects and just kind of kept catapulting. And like I fell in love with DeLand. Like we go to DeLand all the time. And I was like, hey, DeLand, this is fun. And I love this town. And I love learning the history about the towns and then painting the beautiful buildings that kind of tell the story of the town and the community and these beloved parts of the community that maybe the regular tourist might not understand or see.
Yeah.
So it feels like a true local product. But now I definitely gravitated more towards like Florida State Parks. That's become a big part of Jelly Press. And that's been really exciting and has given me opportunities beyond my wildest dreams this year in working with REI. So that's kind of where my mind has been blown this year and has been the best year of my life after these 4.5 years of doing this. So yeah, we're just going to go see what happens next. I've been working with South Carolina and now North Carolina now. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and so
my
a few things that I absolutely love about what you're creating. So one is the fact that you use a mixture of and granted, I'm not an artist, so I just appreciate it. But what I do love is the fact that you provide, it's kind of a mixture of everything from, especially when you're doing like your buildings and stuff like that, but it's a mixture of watercolors, inks, which I think is great because it kind of gives it that, it's just a great effect and a great vision on how you do it. One thing I was kind of curious about, because you said that, it's obviously things that you recall or you see when you're doing something like that, when you're kind of doing, let's just say even the parks or anything like that, is it one of those things where it's a mental snapshot where you're actually, you look at it mentally and you kind of just close your eyes and put it in? Is it one of those things where you take some photos of things that represent it and then you relook at those photos and then from there you then kind of set the tone of what you're painting? I'm very curious. I'm always curious about the creative outlet of how you do it. Or is it one of those things you do a quick sketch somewhere? How does that usually go about?
I think it's probably a mixture of both, but for the most part, the illustrations that I do of the parks or cities or wherever, for the most part, it's a collage of pieces of where I go. So for instance, let's see, Payne's Prairie, it's got the bison and it's got like a bald eagle flying over and it's got some of the water. So it's kind of like my perspective from looking up from one of the lookouts by the visitor center and kind of what the whole prairie looked like. And then we did one of the trails, which was more like ground level where you would interact with the animals. So it's just kind of like a hodgepodge. And I mean, it's really cliche to say, but it literally is just like a vision that comes in my head after the experience. I'm like, I see it. Like there's a bird, there's a this, there's a this. And then I'll do a quick sketch that nobody in their right mind would be able to understand except for my brain. And then that's it. Like some of them are trickier than others, but like the DeLand aerial print was really quite difficult, but that's it's pretty simple. It's just like a vision that pops in my head and I wish I could like explain it better, but it's just, I see it and I do it.
No, that answers my question. So a few little things that, there's definitely a few things that I definitely want to touch on with you. One is the fact that, and I'm trying to like figure out, so I'll admit I'm guilty of this. And so many probably other business owners that may do the same, but I'm not very good at putting out into the universe my intentions or my goals. But I bring this up because I love, and we'll even put underline exclamation point, that you put it out there, that, that you basically said, I want to be a national brand. And
Oh yeah.
to me, I think that is like, I think that's awesome, because we don't do it enough, as small businesses, to think that we could be national brands. And I think that obviously the hard work has definitely helped with that, and at least getting you to build that, and especially within the last year. So my first question is, okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Like, where did that mindset come from? Have you always had it, or is it just something that you just said, I love this and I think it should be bigger than what it is? How did you come about it?
I think it was probably a bit of, for lack of better words, a hangover from the confidence of being a teacher in a classroom, of like, I am such an introverted person, and being in the classroom really got me out of my shell. And so every time I went in front of the class and I was like, I'm Meryl Streep, this is my award-winning performance, I am so extroverted and I'm funny and all those things. So I think I was just like, word vomit, national brand. And maybe I thought I wasn't going to be doing this in 5 years still, so no one was going to actually hold me accountable to that. So I don't know what possessed me to say that, because I wouldn't say I'm generally like a super confident person. But that's where this year has just been like, it could actually happen. And
Yeah.
it's under 5 years, which was my goal, is 5 years. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where that really came from. I think I was like blacked out and said it.
Hey, then everyone, you hear that? Either have a few cocktails of liquid courage,
Yeah.
and literally say it and put it out there, because we all can be very successful. The other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was, and I just kind of wanted to get more insight, and I thought maybe it would help our listeners, and also me, because I obviously I book my guests so I can learn from them. So my question is this: you're in over 20 retail stores in Florida, and plus you're in at least, I think, like at least 4 REIs stores as well. So my question to you is, how did you get into the Florida retailers? Is it something that they reached out to you, or you reached out to them? Tell me a little bit about that storyline of how, or maybe give advice to someone who's looking to get into retailers like myself.
Yeah, I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most common like Instagram questions I get from
Mm-hmm.
other businesses. So I think the upper hand I have is my background is in merchandising, and I was a buyer right out of grad school. So I kind of got to have that experience of seeing small businesses and their proposals to buyers, their line sheets, and I really understood that side of the industry. And I got to sit in these meetings where, reps were coming in and they were selling the product, and they had all their numbers of like, hey, this is how well it's done in these retailers for the past, X amount of years. These are our key products. It's going to sell really well for you. Just that confidence. So that really gave me the upper hand. I understood line sheets. I understood all of that component. So when I had those first like New Smyrna products, and social media was a huge thing. Like Instagram was really having its moment right now. It's really having a moment in a bad way. I'm having a struggle with it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, it was great. And just using those hashtags. And my first retailer was Posh Pineapple here in New Smyrna Beach on Canal Street. And she just like DM'd me, and I had a meeting with her, but I went in with a line sheet and, product. And I said, this is how many I think you should sell. And that really gave me that upper hand. So, and I taught line sheets and buying and those kind of components. So I had 5 years of experience teaching that to students and understanding the aesthetics of putting together what a line sheet should look like and what information a buyer is looking for, or a retailer. So that gave me a huge upper hand. So I'm always an open book. Like if anybody has questions about what a line sheet should look like, I'm always an open book. Like email me, DM me, and I'm happy to help, because that's a huge hurdle to get over. And even just I get surprising like DMs from people who are like, how much should I sell? Like, what wholesale prices should I look at? And, generally speaking, it's 50% less than whatever your retail price is. And that's a pretty standard number across the industry. If you get into larger stores, you're looking more for, like 60 to 70% profit margin. So, but like REI has been super flexible because I want to support a small business. So I still have a standard 50% markup with them. So, which is great. But yeah.
And then the other stores, like besides the one that was local, like the other ones, did it just kind of escalate? Were you reaching out to folks, or were they reaching out to you? And then you kind of had an idea, or maybe even when you were traveling. I'm assuming since you're kind of, as you're traveling to these locations, like in DeLand and stuff like that. So since you're in the area, you're kind of seeing, you're walking around and you're seeing these shops. And is it one of those things that when you walk into those shops, do you have, I don't know, I'm thinking more because I'm like, even thinking for myself, like, is it one of those things that I need to have something in my car, like to be ready? So if I walk in and I'd be like, oh, this would be a great store to have this, and maybe even drop in, like maybe I put like an enamel pin in my business card and be like, here, I just want to show you my brand. Is that something that you would do, or how did you go about it?
Absolutely. So I have been super fortunate that 95% of the retailers I work with have found me. And I'm so fortunate for that. But there was a period of time where, I was like, okay, goal is X amount of retailers. And I just put out the St. Augustine series, and I wanted more retailers because it's such a touristy place. And, I went to school there and I know all the spots. And so I did go door to door, and I dropped off samples, and I dropped off like profit analysis from other stores. Like, this is how many that they have sold, and this is why, and this is the profits, and here's your, this is what money you're going to make. And, I had the whole thing, and I would drop them off. And surprisingly, which is a terrible thing to say, like, I didn't get many responses from that, which is crazy. Because I did provide the numbers and the justifications as to, this is a great product. It'll move well for you. And I was even offering, hey, here's free product, put on your floor, sell it, make 100% profit margin off of it, because my profit margins are pretty high for paper goods and what my retail is. So it's not a lot of loss to me, but if they become a reoccurring wholesale account, then
it's worth it.
That's a win. That's a win for me. So I do that sometimes, even still. If it's a retailer I really believe in and I love, and I'm just like, I want all the brownie points, I'll say, your first order is free. Like, test it out.
Yeah.
And usually it does well. And that allows me also to pick the products that I think will do well, because nobody knows your brand better than you do, and what your top sellers are. And even like the neighbors, like, they asked me, what are your top selling products? And I was like, thank you. A retailer who asked me, because I have all that data, because obviously they are small business owners as well. And they understand that you as the maker know exactly what sells best. So right. I always appreciate when a retailer asks me that. And so I always also offer that information to a new retailer as well. It's like, hey, these are my top sellers. Or if they don't order the top sellers in their first order, I'll throw them in for free. Like, hey, try these out. It may be a risky item for them. It might be a higher price point item. I'm just like, whatever, like, try out a couple of keychains and see how they go. So it kind of a little bit of everything.
No, I like it. I like that. And so we'll kind of, I'm going to double back. I'm going to ask the question first, and then I want to double back on, once again, kind of hit home on the point of me telling you that you do know how to hit a mark when you see an opportunity there. One of the things that I found very interesting when we finally met in real life, I met that I thought it was funny that, one of the big things that I think that you do so well when you're capturing all these places, especially since you're doing so many national, all the state parks, is that, you kind of, even though, your husband, Eric, was born and raised in Florida, you kind of tell him, hey, no, we're going to go to the spring and we're going to do this. And I could totally see someone who's already lived somewhere being like, oh, I already did that when I was a kid or whatever. I don't need to go there.
Yeah.
And it's so different, the perspective when you're going back. So, and it's amazing to me because, you know, one of the products that you've created is, you know, and I think it's amazing because really what you're kind of creating and kind of almost bringing back, is the idea of like what you were saying for like the 1970s, or like, you know, pre-Disney, is that, you know, like we do have a magical world of Florida and what like the beauty, the natural beauty of it. And one of the things that I think is very interesting is that you created a poster. It's like a screen printed poster that you basically can buy, available at REI on your website and all that. I think it's sold out right now, but on your website, you know, that basically is a poster that has over 170 plus, I think, state parks, which obviously then also gives you content to create for these state parks. But what I find very interesting in this is the fact that I know that I'm assuming, and I'm kind of curious about how the poster came about. Was that something that you said, hey, I want to do this? Or was it because as you were starting to do more of these, the Florida State Park Foundation reach out to you and you guys kind of work together? How did that relationship come about?
Yeah. So the relationship with the Florida State Park Foundation, I always wanted to be associated with some sort of 501c3, to give back some sort of profit from, you know, what I'm doing and give back to what I love. I obviously visit these parks and, you know, I imagine have some sort of impact on the park. So I want to give back and make it better than, you know, the way I left it. So we kind of just had like this natural relationship form. In terms of the checklist, that was something that I wanted because there's a lot of parks and there's a long list and most of them are in alphabetical order. And so I'll be in the car and I'm like, I wonder if there's just, you know, a park around here I'd like to visit. And all of the checklists have them in alphabetical order. And I was like, oh, like my OCD is like, but what region of Florida? Like the Panhandle is 7 hours away. So that's why I wanted to do a checklist that was more user friendly. So it's divided into North, Central, and South Florida. So that was kind of a product that I really wanted selfishly, but it also allowed me to do a little bit of research about each park as I was adding it to the checklist, because there are a lot. There's technically, I think they say 175 state parks, but some of the parks it's literally like a playground that the state has taken over in terms of like taking care of it.
Yeah.
So I was like, that doesn't really count. That's not something that I want to go to. So I kind of fine-tuned the list a bit more into like places that you would really want to go.
Yeah.
So that's how the checklist started. And I thought it would be a great product for REI for Christmas. I was like, that's what I would want for Christmas. Like, now I've really built up this consumer who loves the state parks, who loves hiking, who loves exploring. I was like, this demographic needs this in their life. And it was a crazy seller. I sold 300 in like 2 months. And so I'm sold out now. And I'm collaborating with Mama Sauce, which is a screen printer in Orlando. Love them. So yeah, unfortunately I can't get any more until January, but it's been a great product. It's been a great product for REI. The hard thing is like keeping it gender neutral, because I want to attract like both the male and female customer as well. And it's been really refreshing because I keep that in my mind all the time of like, be gender neutral. Like you're an REI customer, like this REI customer. I want it to attract both male and female. And it's been satisfying because I think I have created like an aesthetic that is gender neutral. And that's really hard, especially in a female brain. Because, you know, females are for the most part, you know, going to be your number one consumer and they're going to buy a lot of it, even just for their husbands or a male in their life. So that's a pressure when getting into apparel and really wanting to have a broader consumer base. So that makes a whole journey, whole journey for you.
And then did you use I'm assuming you used now, if I remember correctly, you basically the poster did, and I was this is one of the things I was curious about was, did the poster come first or did you go and start, because you already were doing stickers and prints
Mhm.
for a lot of these parks? So it was like the poster kind of like, this is my checklist, and then from that checklist you then started doing creating art for it, or was it art and then the checklist, then the poster, the checklist came?
Art and then checklist.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions, a lot of requests for, hey, will you do the state park? Hey, will you do that the state park? This was kind of my way of visually putting something out and being like, there's a lot of parks. Like
Yeah,
I'm trying to get around
I'm
to as many
getting
as
there.
possible.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm getting there. And so I needed
yeah.
like that visual to put out there. And that's been so awesome for everyone to respond and be like, I had no idea there were that many parks. I'm like, yes, there's only so much gas in the world and I have to put miles on my car. I'll get there.
How many, just, and I'll ask this and then I'm gonna have one other question. I have a few other ones, but how many have you done art for that's on that checklist? Like out of the 170, how many have you even, you're not even at the tip of the iceberg, right? You're kind of, you're still plucking away at this.
I think I've done probably 6 or 7 of the state parks, and there's a lot more to go.
Yeah, for sure. That makes that, so yeah, you're just, and that's the beauty of it, because that gives you content to create,
Yeah.
and product to create, which is amazing. And then one little tidbit that I thought was very interesting based on your REI is the fact that usually when you deal with like large corporations, you deal with large, like, massive, dealing with the main, I guess, main headquarters. But the beauty
Mhm.
of these REIs, is that their buying is pretty much, or their purchasing is really done very local,
Mhm.
local sense. So that's
Yeah,
provided you a lot of opportunity. And I'm assuming that based on that success is what's kind of led you to have some in South Carolina and North Carolina as well.
exactly. So I work with a manager from each store. And so that also allows me to understand that area and what that customer wants. So, like Gainesville, my husband went to UF Law School, but I didn't really know the area super well in terms of like the like natural things and what that kind of demographic wanted. I knew what UF kids liked and what he liked, but I didn't know anything about Payne's Prairie or all the springs in the area. So talking to them gives me kind of that upper hand of like, these are the top parks that people go to. This is what our customer wants. So it's a great source of information for me, to kind of work off of for creating product. So, and I tend to give them priority in my life because they're amazing and the teams are amazing and they've given me this amazing opportunity. So pretty much if they ever say, we want this, I'm like, I'll get it done in a week.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, how the South Carolina, North Carolina thing happened, was because I'll produce it pretty quickly. Because I know, again, like that with that buyer experience, is like, this is the hole that they have in their, on their floor. So they want that product pretty quickly. So, and it seems to be working out. So
That's great. So I'm gonna touch back to the point of the idea that I mentioned, how you are very good at seeing an idea come about, and or seeing a need for something. So one of the things that I've kind of noticed, and I think you alluded to it earlier when you said that you're starting to get more into the apparel aspect of it, was the fact that I think you noticed, and I had read somewhere that you had seen, and I don't know if you've even had conversations with the Florida State Park Foundations or whatnot, but the fact that there isn't really something having to do like apparel or merchandising aspect of those parks. And
yeah,
so that's kind of, I think, what kind of led you to go, hey, I'm going to make my own, due to the fact that I'm already doing all these parks. So then that's what kind of led you to build or create your Society of Florida Explorers. And so I think that's amazing to me, that's kind of how your thought process went. And then at the same time, you're also like, oh, well, I'll do this. And then I'll actually donate back, kind of the same way, kind of like I'll donate back to those resources for what they're creating, but I'll be able to actually do that. So once again, I kind of want to commend you on the fact that you are very good at seeing what you're actually, what there's a need of, but at the same time, it's within your, it's in the same, we'll say in the same playground or the same state park that you're playing in,
yeah.
for you to be able to see, which I think is amazing. What is that kind of, and then obviously now with apparel, you're now dealing with the funness of apparel, because I see you have quite a bit of different things, a lot of different products, a lot of different lines of different with different designs, but different garments. How difficult has that transition been for you? Because it's definitely a different animal compared to what, prints and stickers and paper product is.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround for prints and postcards. The printer is literally at the other end of Canal Street from my office. So I'm like, hey, Stacy, I need 20 of these. Can you run those off for me? Like, it's a quick turnaround and like no minimums, which is lovely. So getting into the t-shirt world and apparel, that's definitely a hard pill to swallow in terms of minimums. And there's been such a shortage of t-shirts, like blank shirts, which has been just a nightmare. So I do use like a direct to garment digital printer as well as screen printing. So the digital printing is obviously a little bit quicker to come back in terms of turnaround, and screen printing takes a little bit longer. But I would say the size run issue right now of like, you can get a small and you can get a large, you can't get a medium, like, but medium is what I need. So that's hard when you are working with larger retailers who want a full size run and you're like, well, I can only give you a couple of these. So that's something that is obviously affecting everyone globally. So I'm just used to that quick turnaround. So it is, I get a design, I'm like, I want to see this on a t-shirt now. And so just waiting, those couple months to have that turnaround is a new experience. But it's fun and it's exciting, but I really hope the t-shirts demand, the availability changes in 2022. That would be lovely.
I would appreciate it very much. Especially since that's all I'm surrounded by.
Yeah, that's gotta be super hard for you. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting printing shirts the last quarter. What advice?
The price is going up too. That's fun.
Correct. Yeah, everything's going up. It's just becoming harder. It's definitely making things a little bit more difficult for all of us. You got to definitely get creative on these things. What advice would you give someone possibly either starting out or maybe having, kind of like, I know you had a lot of aha moments. What advice would you give someone who wants to start something and then maybe kind of is on the fence on it?
I just say do it. I mean, you only live once, and what it's a regret that you may have. I know in some ways it's a financial burden. Obviously, I was really lucky that paper is pretty cheap and stickers are pretty cheap. So it was a really low risk financially for me to start Chelsea Press. And I've not had to take out any sort of loans or anything for capital, which has been amazing. And I do have a supportive family unit that allows me the flexibility and gave me the opportunity financially to kind of step back and let this thing grow. That's probably the hardest part. If you're single and you don't have another source of income, that is very stressful and that's scary. So my first piece of advice, if you are in that situation, is to try to have some sort of income. So do a part-time job or something like that and start this on the side, because it's a lot of people are like, oh, I hate my job and I have a full-time job and I just want to quit and do my own thing. That sounds great. But that's really scary in terms of like being a human and living. So get a part-time job, do something that's easy, have a little bit of cash that's coming in to support you and to also support your new endeavor, and just, get started. And then I'm a big goal setter, obviously. Like, I really like having goals and I love being held accountable to deadlines. I love deadlines, which is the weirdest thing coming from an artist. Like, oh, like give me a deadline tomorrow and I'll meet it. Like, I love it. I love the stress. I love the anxiety. Like, that makes me so excited. That motivates me. So set up like your first art show or your first event and find a market and say, all right, I've got 2 months. I signed up for this market and I'm going to do it. That holds you accountable to it and you have a deadline. And so that gives you some time to do it and create business cards, create products, figure things out, talk to other small businesses, see what things that you may need in terms for your setup, but just sign up for a market and do it. And the experience that you'll have at your first market is going to be amazing. Like people are going to be so excited to see your product. They're going to be so excited to meet you. They're going to be excited that you're doing this. And I did this recently with my sister. She's a fine artist and she's kind of in that same situation where she wants to quit her job and she wants, to be full-time artist. So I was like, all right, sign up for the art festival in Kentucky and I'm going to come up with my tent and we're going to do it. And she was scared. And I was like, sign up. She got accepted and we went. And the first day, I mean, she's glowing. Like people are coming in just like, I love your art. It's beautiful. And she had an amazing show. Like, I think people are so afraid of that failure, but it's probably not. Like that first show is going to be great and you're going to feel so good about it. And I wish everybody would take who wants to be an entrepreneur, because that's a disease that I don't know if I would bless upon many people, or it's a curse. I don't want you to live with regret, and just sign up for that market and give it a try. Markets are pretty cheap to be a part of. It's pretty low base to get into. So, spend the $50, do it, create some product and see how it goes. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't like it. And then you're like, okay, well, I have a couple $100 invested in it and this isn't the right thing. But more likely than not, they're going to love it.
And at the same time, I even think I mentioned this to you before, because we both did a market recently, and I've been doing this for a while, and even doing it for a while, it's one of those things where I love my product, obviously, but I also look at it as this is all, I've said it numerous times and I keep repeating it so I can tell myself, like, sometimes a customer needs to see a product 5 or 7 times to actually buy it. And so sometimes, especially if your product's very different, sometimes you just need them to at least initially see it. And so you use that opportunity as a marketing aspect of it, where you're like, hey, I didn't sell as much as I thought, but I got a lot of eyes on me and a lot of people got to see me, and a lot of people now are following me. I always get a huge influx of followers on social media, because based on having that conversation and having that dialogue and them seeing you and kind of going that route. And then later on, it builds this product. So definitely an opportunity, always an opportunity. Always take it as an opportunity, whether it's good or bad, always take the opportunity to do it. So I definitely
Biggie, my first show was a nightmare. Like,
really?
I have postcards and prints. I didn't have stickers at the time. And I was at Outriggers on the water here in New Smyrna Beach. It was like hurricane force winds. I have paper.
Yeah.
And the paper is flying. Like everything is flying. I didn't have like a real tent. I didn't have sides. I had nothing, thinking about wind. I am literally in the corner, like rocking back and forth, wanting to just go home. And I have all my girlfriends there, like, no, we're going to fix this. And we're like strapping things down with like duct tape and zip lines. And that's why I like to be inside at the Delandany Market, because wind and rain are a nightmare for all paper. And everything. Yeah. So, but I got my first wholesale account out of that, and I got social media followers, and it was a nightmare.
So even in a nightmare situation, still can be good. I love it. My last question before I kind of let you tell folks how they can find you. Someone asked me this. One of our listeners asked me this question, and I kind of liked it because I was kind of curious and see what other businesses thought about this. I was asked the question: how much luck do you feel is needed to be successful?
10%.
Okay.
10% luck. I think it's a lot of it's a hard work. It is hard work. I work all the time. I work when I'm sleeping. I work when I'm awake. I love what I do. It's work ethic. It's confidence. It's intelligence. It's creating a great product, quality control. And then I'd say 10% luck. I mean, I definitely have had a lot of lucky moments, but I think it's also because I have a great product. So it's like everything has to align to get that luck. But I definitely think there's a little bit in there.
I definitely think luck happens, but I think luck happens because of the fact of all that you build up to that luck. So at the end of the day, is it really luck? So that 10% sounds about right, at least to me, because I feel like by the time you get to that point, where that tipping point where things start kind of falling in the domino effect and falling in your direction, I think it's because you've already created all these opportunities. And I think what tends to happen is we sometimes I mean, this is in any an everyday life journey. And I keep telling myself this, especially, when we go to the new year and things like that, is like, I always like think back to myself. I'm like, keep an idea of all the different things, because by the time you're done, even a good example, running a marathon, by the time you run and finish that finish line and you turn back, you have all those steps that you did behind you to get you to that point where you're at, that got you to that point.
Yeah.
And some of them were maybe falls, and some of those were maybe possibly, you got a burst of energy and you just kind of, had your best time, but it all kind of adds up. So, I mean, it's definitely, I definitely agree with that. I think it's, obviously, I think your hard work builds the luck opportunity. But I definitely thought it was an interesting question, because I do think you get lucky breaks, but I think you get lucky breaks because you've built yourself to get to that point, to get to earn those lucky breaks.
Like the REI thing. So
yeah.
Gainesville REI was the first one to reach out to me. And so I went and met with them in Gainesville, and Wendy, who's one of the managers over there, she's like, "Do you know how we found you?" And I was like, "I actually don't." And I had no idea. And she said one of the girls who worked for her, she was on Etsy, and like she was from Winter Park, and saw my Winter Park print on Etsy, and then saw my other products. And she was like, "Hey, let's reach out to her and see if she wants to sell product." And they emailed several other brands that didn't email her back. That blows my mind.
Really?
So like, check your email, people. Like there's opportunity knocking on your door. I mean, that was pretty lucky. I mean, that's unusual, circumstances for it to lead to REI, but it's been absolutely life-changing. This is the first year I've ever had actual profits, like be in the positive. My accountant just emailed me today, and she's like, "Good job, Chelsea." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so exciting." He's like, "But now you have to pay taxes on that." I was like, "No, never mind. I don't want to be this lucky." It's not good, but
no, that's great, and I'm very happy for your success. I think it's very well merited. I think you're killing it, and I absolutely love seeing all the different things that you create and do, and I love seeing your successes on social media as well. Speaking of social media, where can people find you, and at the same time do some shopping and also follow you on social media?
So you can find everything that I have at my website, which is jellypressfl.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. They're kind of one and the same in terms of content. I think it's just Jelly Press on Instagram, and maybe Jelly Press Florida on Facebook. I can't really remember, but if you have Jelly Press, you'll find me. So I'm pretty active on Instagram, and I like to document like traveling through Florida and where I'm going. And hopefully there's more of that in 2022, because I haven't been anywhere in a while since the Christmas, but I'm excited to get back out and get in my kayak and explore some more of Florida.
I mean, that's one of the beauties of also, even during a pandemic, the pandemic can't stop a state park. So you can definitely spend some quality time in nature. So that's always a good thing. But
but then everybody else found the parks. That's the problem.
That was the problem. No, I totally agree with that. I know I did more of my fair share of more hikes and things like that I would usually do because of that. So I totally get that. Thank you so much for being on the show, Chelsea. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
I appreciate that very much. That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Chelsea Preston of Jelly Press for being on the show with us and having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to check her out. If you're anywhere in Florida, definitely if you do go anywhere in Florida, heck, I would recommend going on. If you don't find any good art, definitely go on Jelly Press FL and maybe buy art and print art, because it's beautiful stuff. You definitely want to have it in your house. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, spread it like PB&J. And of course, if you want to support me, check out my brand, Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping and maybe tell your friends there as well. And if not, maybe send me a sandwich selfie. I'll take those as well. Thank you so much. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.